Dave from Dave's Glory Shopworks here, and on this episode we're going to do a little update and kind of story time. So over the last 2 nights I've been working on my daughter Aiden's 1980 Chevy C20. You guys saw a couple videos of it where we fixed up the door locks and lubed up the windows and got a couple of lights working that weren't working before. Well, one of the things that I knew about when we got the truck was that the rear brake flex hose was missing. So, okay, yes, my daughter's driving a truck around on front brakes, but it's a 3/4 ton with large brakes, and she's a new driver that's putting around, and she's doing fantastic. I wouldn't have given her the truck if I didn't have full confidence in her to drive properly. We've all been there driving, we'll say, various stages of streetable or not, or safe for the road or not. But anyway, it was time to get after the brakes. So I surveyed the brakes on the rear of the truck. The rear line from the front to the back was pretty rusty, so okay, we got to do a rear line. The 2 lines on the diff, they were just as rusty and ready to fall apart. Okay, one look at the brake bleeders on the rear wheel cylinders told me there's not a hope in heck that they're going to work without snapping off or something stupid. So we ordered a flex line and a roll of 1/4 inch brake line and 2 rear wheel cylinders. So we started the job yesterday about 6 p.m. After everybody's off work and all that jazz and had supper. And I took it down to my shop so we could work on the hoist, which was really, really good. Makes it a lot easier and faster. So started by pulling the rear drums off. Passenger side was seized on pretty hard, and they're large. They're 13-inch brake drums. They're like that big around. So passenger side was hard to get off. I got it off. Driver's side a little bit easier, no problem. Took a look. Thankfully, there was brake shoes there, because somebody had already cut the park brake cables, and the diff vent tube was missing, and all kinds of things that said maybe somebody was getting ready to strip this differential. So figured it'd be pertinent if I at least saw that there were shoes in there before we started running lines. So all the shoes and hardware were there, but 2 of the springs, one on either side, were kind of ground up and broken and laying in the bottom of the brake drums. So I go ahead and called up the after hours parts guy, okay, and which is John, by the way, from the videos where we built that engine for him and got it in his nice little 1979 Dodge half-ton shorty. So anyway, call up John. Hey man, you got a brake spring kit? Yep, 15 bucks, perfect. So he takes my daughter up to the parts store. They go get the brake spring kit. No problem, happy as a clam. He comes back, get her all organized and going, and I'm laying out the brake spring kit, laid it all out. He takes off, and I don't know, I got the line ran, I got the rear lines. I was starting to make them when I realized, or no, got the rear lines run, got the wheel cylinders in, and then started putting the brakes back on, and I realized, hey, this spring isn't the right spring. Like, I have all the springs for the regular shoes to go on, but I don't have this one spring that goes across the bottom with the adjuster. I'm like, oh man, we got to buy adjuster kits now. So unfortunately I had to call John again. Sure enough, he checked online, they had them in stock. So off Aiden and a guy go, we meet him at the parts store, get the cylinder. So now she's, instead of it being a $15 quick fix, it turned into, all totaled, but 75, 80 bucks just for springs and hardware. But the adjusters come with the extra levers and all the little extra doodads that you don't normally get. So, which is pretty cool for Chevy, I will give you that. Dodges, you cannot get any of the brake levers for anything from the mid-80s and back. Heck, early 90s and back. But hey, no problem. So, and I figured out why those springs were broke too when I was putting all the shoes and everything back together. Somebody had put the 2 springs in the wrong location, one on either side, and once the brakes adjusted out so far, the springs just snapped, and then they just rolled around in there. So while I was running that brake line, I'd found that someone had cut and crimped the the line from the master cylinder, from the proportioning valve, along the passenger side frame to about somewhere near the transmission basically, and there was a union. I'm like, okay, the union looks good, and that brake line to the front looks great, no need to replace it. It's only the rest from rear back that was rusted to heck. So I joined it there, got all the brakes together, and last night, geez, it was probably 11 o'clock at night when we started bleeding brakes. So it was kind of a long process, but hey, I mean, we knew getting a used vehicle from somebody we didn't know that there would be little oddball things, and nobody takes care of vehicles the same as the next person. I understood that fully going in, and she understood she had a project. So we started bleeding the brakes, and we could not get any fluid at all. Like no fluid dribbling, no fluid pressure, nothing. It's not even going down in the master cylinder. I'm like, what is going on? So I start thinking about it. I'm like, hey, if the proportioning valve, if that line blew and that's why they crimped it off, the proportioning valve has that valve in it that will shunt to one side and stop brake fluid flow. That's probably what it is. So I tried the procedure for, as I was going to try the procedure to get the valve to go back to center, I noticed that the rear brake line was actually completely disconnected at the proportioning valve. What somebody did was they undid the brake line, bent it over to the side so it looked like it was still there, but they put another fitting in with a nail in it. So they just left a part of the line in there, in the fitting, put the nail in, and I've done this in the past when you've got like a caliper that's locking up and you got to get home or something like that. You just grab a nail, shove it in the line, and you can go. Then you actually repair it though, and I don't think these people ever had any hope in wanting to repair it. So from there, it progresses further. I made a new section of line now because that line had been open to the elements. There was mud all over the inside of it. I'm like, I'm not even chancing running that junk through it with all the new stuff at the back now. So go ahead, made a new line tonight because we finished up about midnight last night and I still had work in the morning. So yeah, we made the new line, connected it, and okay, like 20 minutes we had a new line on there, easy peasy. She jumps in the truck, starts pumping the brakes, still no fluid pressure at all. And the brake pedal doesn't even feel different. Now that it's got all this volume of air, it doesn't feel different. I'm like, well, I don't understand it, but we'll try the proportioning valve. Maybe it was actually latched over. Excuse me. Maybe it was latched over one way. Did the procedure to try and get the fluid running. Basically, you cause a leak on the front section is what happens, whether it's at the bleeder or at one of the lines or whatever, and it's supposed to allow that valve. It's got kind of spring-loaded both sides. I've never pulled one apart, but it's what I read, and it'll just shunt itself back to middle again, allowing fluid pressure to go down both ways, essentially. So, could not get fluid pressure, could not get fluid flow, couldn't get so much as a huff of air out of the rear, and at this point I disconnected it at the union over, like along the frame on by the transmission. Why? Why do I have no fluid? There's a new master cylinder on this thing, the proportioning valve's good, all the front lines are good. Somebody had done some work to the brakes, obviously, to disconnect the rears with the nail in it. And I started beating my head against the wall. Like, I'm a journeyman automotive mechanic. That's my trade. I've been in this, I've been doing mechanic work since I was old enough to start learning the size on wrenches, you know. With my dad and going through my full apprenticeship, the whole deal. So I have experience. I have a lot of drum brake experience. I have a lot of brake system experiences. I build my own systems for most everything that I drive. Long story short, I started thinking like an idiot and I decided, hey, if I don't want it to leak, maybe I'll put a second nail up at the master cylinder to the rear system. That was shoved right inside the rear line for the rear brakes off the master. Well, I guess hallelujah that we found it. But that was painful. Like, you do not need to put 2 nails in the system to do this. And I was questioning in my head, why would somebody put 2 nails in? And then I figured it out as I was finally getting fluid. It was great. She was pumping, holding, and I was starting to get fluid, but it was only dribbling out, not a lot of pressure at all. And it's still troubling me, and then I thought, what are the chances they never bothered bleeding the master cylinder properly, like bench bleeding it. So I started doing, you can bleed a master cylinder sometimes by cracking the line as somebody pushes the pedal down, and then before they stop, you lock the line again, or pump, hold, open, close, pump, hold, open, close, you know, like that. So it's a simple procedure, and sure enough, I was getting gobs of air out of the master cylinder. Finally got the master cylinder bled. Bing! Rear brakes. Suddenly we have pressure, and we've got stroke on the pedal, and everything's suddenly working. So I finished readjusting the rear brakes, got it on the ground. I mean, long story short on this, it took us 9 hours total to do a 3-hour job. And for me, a 3-hour job is replacing all the rear lines, replacing the rear wheel cylinders, reassembling the rear brakes, and adjusting everything and bleeding it. It's about 3 hours, man, and you're done. So to go through this at 9 hours, my stress level was getting pretty high. And she was in it to win it, though. Aiden was in it to win it. She was good to go. Didn't matter how long it took, we were getting her done. We still have a couple other things to do to the truck. But I gotta say, if you don't want to repair something, like, if you don't want to repair it or repair it properly, that's one thing, guys. Like, but let somebody know. If you think you're repairing it properly, well, you're just dang dangerous. And if this is supposed to be a temporary repair to get you off the side of the road or out of the bush or something, fix it the first chance you get. These are rear brakes. Like, I know everybody thinks the front brakes do most of the work, which they do, but rear brakes are still important. They balance the truck. Long story short, a little bit frustrating, but there is a good note on it. So when we were done, and I did the first road test in the truck. Now she's got proper pedal travel. Everything feels really good. Truck stops straight. No issues. I'm happy. She can take it wherever she wants now. She still has to mind her fuel gauge because there is no fuel gauge working. But we have the sending unit to fix it, and that's another story for another day. But getting a little long-winded here. So she left, and I followed her up the road. She was heading to her mom's for the night, and I'm heading home. And before we diverged paths, we got to a red light together. So I pulled up in my little short box pickup. It's a little V6. It's not fast, but it is decent on fuel. Today's fuel prices, right? And she looks over at me, and I gave her the thumbs up, and she said, "Yeah, it's working good." Nodded her head. All right, good to go. And I felt really cool at that moment as I looked over at my daughter, and we were cruising side by side. She's 16, got her own wheels, cool old truck. I'm driving my old beater, just happy as a clam. It felt pretty cool at that moment in time. It really did. And then the next thing that happens, the light turns green, and she smoked me off the line. She was gone like a bat out of hell. And it took me a second. I was like, what happened? So I start driving, and she looked behind her to see if I'd stalled out or if something was wrong with my truck. Because my kids have driven with me, well, she's driven with me for 16 years, and she knows that when light goes green next to one of my buddies, I give her. I was still in the moment of, this is so cool, dad moment. You know, I had a really cool dad moment there. And anyway, guys, long story short, a lot of hard work just to get some brakes working. But we had some good vibes during the job. We get to talk, have a good time, hang out with my kid. She's getting cooler by the day. And I say the sky's the limit for this Chevy. We can, whatever she wants to do to it, we will find a way to make it happen. And I hope you guys get to check it out as we go. Thank you very much, guys. I really appreciate you checking out this video. Hope it's not too long for some of you. And take care, and we'll catch you on the next one. Have a good night.